In this video, I'd like to show how we're going to be applying underglaze to one of our two pinch pots. Students, you will remember that you have made two pinch pots. One is going to be fired before we glaze anything. This will be the majolica cup. So this one, we're going to ID and we're going to get that one in the drying cabinet. The other one is the one that we're going to be underglazing, and we are going to be carving with the Sgraffito technique. So this is an example of one that was not only carved, but then I clear glazed it and fired it again. When you select the underglazes, students, I do have tiles in the back. The tiles will say what the color name is, and it will also have a color number that coordinates. When you look at that, you will want to make sure that the name is actually what you see on the label. If someone has put it in the wrong spot, you don't want to grab the wrong one. But you can see when looking at a tile, and this one shows it nicely, that when we clear glaze it, it will intensify the color from the pre-clear glazed look. So do expect that whatever color you have on there, it's going to eventually look like the shiny version because the underglaze is not shiny when it is fired. It's only after we clear glaze it. Now my students, you can glaze the inside and the outside if you want. I'm just going to glaze the outside of mine like I did on this one. I am going to use black. Most of the underglazes that I have, they are the Amaco Velvet Underglazes. They work really nicely. This is also a velvet. Students, I just put it in here because I buy this one by the gallon jug. When you glaze, you should be using a soft, fluffy brush. The soft, fluffy brushes will help your application of glaze to go on more evenly. We have brushes that are stiff that are in our tool bins. Those are not really good for application of glaze because they're stiff and they will scrape off the underneath layers of glaze as you apply it. When you get your brush out, if it is not clean, rinse it off first, and then you will stir up your glaze before using it to make sure it's evenly distributed. Sometimes the glaze might be a little watery on top if it's been sitting. Now, our goal is to put a total of 3 to 5 layers of underglaze on your cup. You can either have it right side up or upside down, it does not matter. Underglaze is one of the rare glazes that if you get it on the bottom, it won't really matter because it shouldn't stick to the shelf. Now, you will notice that I did place a paper towel on the banding wheel. That's just to make my cleanup a little bit easier. So if you don't want to do a paper towel, that's fine. You can just make sure you clean the banding wheel off. Now, this is the first coat. You can see it's quite shiny. It's going to take a few minutes for it to dry. If you're waiting for this to dry, you can work on something else, like work on your design that you're planning on doing for your Sgraffito. I'm going to give this a few minutes, and then I will come back and I will put on the next layers. You know that the underglaze is ready for the next layer when you can touch it and it doesn't come off onto your finger. It should be dry to the touch between your layers. Total of 3 to 5 coats will be what you need. It's been about 4 to 5 minutes and my first coat of glaze is dry. Again, you want to touch the pot to make sure that it is not sticky. You don't want any glaze to come off on your hands. You can see that it visibly looks a little bit lighter, a little bit dustier. That will happen. Underglazes are really just like a colored slip in a way. So they have a lot of clay forming materials in it, so they do have that much lighter look when it dries, like clay looks as it's getting bone dry. Now, for the application of the successive layers, there is a trick that I want to tell you. When you put it on, you want to put it on and brush and really not brush back and forth over that area. By actively brushing back and forth over an area, you can actually kind of reactivate the glaze that's underneath, and you can cause a bit of an issue with pulling glaze off. That looks like, I just want to make sure it's even. That looks pretty even. That looks good for my second coat, and I will let that dry, and then again I will do a third coat and take a look at it. If it looks remotely thin, go for a fourth coat or a fifth coat. I do recommend to my students when we're doing red clay, maybe use closer to 5 coats with the light colors. You might not notice it as much with the dark colors, but do make sure that you're not rebrushing over the glaze. Okay, my last coat is dry enough, and I'm going to finish off my last layer of glaze. Again, being careful not to overbrush the previous layers that are on there. Now there is one more thing that I would like to do on the top edge, and I want to flip that over to show you. I'm just going to pick up the turntable so I can hold the pot right side up, and then I'll set it down. Now what I'd like to do is just tidy up the top edge. Right now I can either add more glaze and make it all covered, or I can take it off a little bit, and I think it's going to look nice and uniform if I just wipe it and make it appear even. Okay. Now, I'm going to let this dry, get it to the leather hard state, put it in a bag. When it is leather hard, that's when I want to do the carving. So we don't want it to dry out before we do the carving. We want to keep it leather hard. That will be the next video.